Okay, so I'm doing a sort of walkthrough tutorial kind of thing of how I made the Edmark Picture Match lesson activities that are on SeeSaw. Okay, and so these are where we have the grid, we have the phrases for the students to read, and we have the images to be positioned under the phrases as appropriate, right? And so, of course, in the classroom, we would have these huge giant cards with the grid and the phrases on them. And then we would have the smaller cards with the images that are kind of like playing card style, right? And we would put them into like a stack of categories or whatever to the side. And then they would have this grid that's this huge chart. So this was the closest I could think of for how to replicate that when we're doing this online with kiddos. And so this is where they're dragging images after reading the phrase and positioning them into the appropriate sections of the grid, right? And so they're dragging and dropping the work like so. Okay, so in order to make these picture match activities in SeeSaw, I come in here and click add and assign student activity. In my library, then I have the choices for things that I've already added or that I've already created. I can take a previous lesson and I can make a copy of it and I can edit that in order to add whatever is changed for additional lessons, right? And so I can work from that as sort of like a template and not be recreating the same thing over and over and just make adjustments on that, which is a huge time saver. So that is a really great option. But I have to create it in the first place. So I'm going to create a new activity. All right, so here I have to have some kind of a title for a name of the activity. And then I need some instructions for students. So if you've been poking around on SeeSaw, you may recognize that people have made the instructions split into very simple steps in a sequence, right? When the student is looking at the activity in Edmark, they first see a little thumbnail and they see the directions, right? And so the directions here are to add a response. And when they get in here, to tap the mic button to record themselves reading the rules, to read the words in each square out loud and sign them. And they have the move icon to make sure that you are using this tool to drag and drop the pictures into the correct squares. And then when finished, to click the green check to add your work to your journal. Okay, so we have the icons here as the student is viewing the work. Notice here, the icons are not here. We have a bit of text in between colons, right? And so what is on this text appearing in between colons is going to be an icon when you have your work saved and it's uploaded. The icon options are on this chart here. I can share this with anybody if you want this, if this is helpful. So these are the different choices in SeeSaw to be the icons, right? So you have this stuff appearing in between the colons, and all of this and the colons will appear as this icon when it's uploaded. Okay, so with it typed out, it looks like this. And this is pretty typical for the format for directions in other SeeSaw work. I can also add voice instructions and I can add multimedia instructions or an example. And so in the first Edmark Picture Match activity that I did post a video of walking through the activity for students or parents to see so that they would be clear about what was the intent for the activity. When you are finished with your directions, come down to the student template. We add a student template for responses. In the more options down here, we can have teacher notes that do not appear for students. That's only visible in our teacher view. And then the skills is only for the pro version. Okay, so we come to adding the template for the student response. And this could be where we might upload a video from YouTube or something like that. We could upload PowerPoint slides. But for us, we're creating this activity within SeeSaw, and so we want to go to the basic drawing board. Okay, so in the basic drawing board, notice our canvas size here. This is our workable space, right? It's landscape orientation, and we have toolbars around the edges that are extending into our canvas space. So we really can't consider this area around here to be a workable space, right? If they come into this area with their cursor, they will be making changes to what they want to do. So try to keep activities as they're interacting with them on the page away from the tools so that they aren't accidentally changing what is happening as they're working on the space. We have the pages over here. It turns out that adding a page is only with the pro version, which I didn't realize until just now, so that was interesting, but this can disappear if students know to make it disappear. So how this changes our workable space, notice what happens down here to our tools down here as I am making this disappear. Our workable space drags out, right? It sort of does a little stretch. And so depending on how the student is looking, just be aware that it might appear different. These tools can be made to go away if the student knows to do that. They also can't change from one tool to another if they make it disappear. Okay, so in our picture match activity, we have our grid, right? We have our phrases for the students to read, and we have our bank with our icons. This would be our cards, right? Our deck. So think about how this space is laid out here, okay? We don't really have this as workable space. So I have it vertically divided here, and I have it horizontally divided twice. And then I have this space on the right reserved for the bank. I could have put the bank across the top. I could put the bank across the bottom, but because of the orientation of this space and the size of it, it seems to make the best sense. And also, I mean, this is how we used this activity in the classroom, right? We had our huge poster grid over here, and we had the cards in a stack, for the most part, really on the right side usually, right? So, I mean, that's familiar to the students too, but I wanted to show you about how the space is divided up. We have the grid divided vertically in half with this space reserved over here, and then I have it horizontally divided twice so that we have 6 sections in our grid. Okay, let's talk for a minute about the toolbars. Okay, so we have this toolbar over here that would list additional pages down here if we were able to go to additional. Okay, so we have this color selecting, which is sort of on a spectrum, right? Right here, you can see how that changes. Notice it's changing our tool down here. Right, so there's a pretty broad range of choices within that. It's really kind of hard to select exactly within that, so it's a little bit rough on the selection, but we have tool choices down here, and there should be a move tool over here, but it's not showing the same in this view right now. Okay, so let's talk about this toolbar. We have text where we can make a text box, okay? We have the mic where we can record, right? You have to give permission to allow that to be done and happening. We have the picture icon where we can upload a photo, a video. We can take a photo, take a video, or upload from some other place, from a hard drive or from a cloud. And then we have the dots with more selections. We have shapes, we have backgrounds, and we can insert a link here. So the background, there's lots of choices to make this like kind of cool and inspiring. We could do lines like notebook paper. We could do a grid like graph paper. We could do like primary writing paper. We could have dots like bullet journal paper, and there's music notation paper. We could also have this be a colored background. That could be pretty fun. I've chosen no background because that is for when the way that our Edmark materials were, that we're familiar with, but also because I want the students to pay attention to the grid and what the 6 sections are. I want them to pay attention to the phrases that are written, that they're reading, and I want them to pay attention to the images. And I don't want them to be visually distracted by anything except for those items, right? So I'm going to come up here and select the shapes, and I want the line shape, okay? When I get my line shape here, I really don't want it to be this color. I want it to be black. So I'm selecting that that is black. Okay, I want my line actually to be vertical, and you're kind of just eyeballing it. You can't really tell it mathematically what you want, so you just are doing the best you can. And it's a little rough with your touchpad controls. And then I'm dragging it over. Okay, remember, I have my image bank over here, my bank space. And then I'm dividing this space right here vertically in 2. So I could have something that I was having students divide things into 2 categories, right? Like maybe sink and float. And I could have the words up here, sink and float, and have images in my bank over here, and they're dragging them into position to categorize whether they sink or float. Or maybe it's living and non-living things, or there could be tons of choices where you might blue or red, you know, where you might be categorizing different things. But in our grid for the picture match activity, we have 6 divisions. And so I need more lines. So I'm going to duplicate the line that I've already made and stretched out and colored black. I want it to be the same. And try to get that horizontal by eyeballing. And I'm leaving space for my bank, right? And I have my tools. So I'm trying to stay out of that space. And I'm going to reposition this up here. I want room for my text and for the image to be dragged. And I'm going to recreate this. I'm going to duplicate it and then reposition this one. And remember that the tools down here are not workable space, okay? I want the student to have this one selected. If they have a pencil selected, they're going to create a mark, right? You can undo that, so it's no big deal. But will the student know that, or will it become frustrating? So it's important that they have this tool selected to be doing the dragging and dropping. And I need to make sure that there's enough space for their phrase and their picture to go here. And notice that this is a little bit tight. So I'm dragging this up to try and make it so that I do have equal partitions of space for the text box and the image, which is a little bit tricky since we can't really mathematically divide it up. Okay, and so we have the basic grid here. When the student is working with this, I don't want them to move the grid around. That would be frustrating. So I want to lock the grid in place. right? I want these items to be locked. I don't want them to be able to reposition them and move that around. So this basic grid here now is locked. And if I decide that I need to reposition something because I don't really like how I divided it up, I can unlock it and reposition it better, and then go back to locking it, okay? Okay, so now to create the phrases on our card. In order to do that, in order to type on our space here, we want to create a text box, okay? In our text box, we're going to type what we want the student to read. So let's have them read horse. And so we have the word horse in our text box here. I can drag this out and reposition it. Notice that the size of the type, the point size of the type is changing depending on how I've dragged out the size of the text box. So I can also rotate the text box and let's just put it back. I can rotate the text box. If I have more text in here, okay, an AAC device is making the words here, right? So if I have more words in here, right, my text box grew vertically. Maybe I don't want it just to be a long vertically text box. Maybe I want it to be horizontally displayed. So I can change the dimensions of my text box here in order to change how these words lay out. And I can change the dimensions of my text box this way also. So I can show how that goes. But I'm going to start over. I just want the word. Okay. My choices with this word are different typefaces, right? So like basically fonts, different type. I can have no background. I can have a border and I can have a background. Okay. For this activity, I want nothing because I just want the student to read the word and because there's limited space. I don't want to have a border or anything because that will mess up the space that they're able to work with for dragging the pictures around. Okay, and so I need another word for this box. And then what else might we have? Let's put something for the bottom. All right. Formatting is not standard with the Edmark activity, so we don't have punctuation necessarily. All right. And maybe I decide that this space in between needs to increase a bit. I can make the type size smaller or larger too if I feel like it's getting in the way of the image area. Okay. Okay, so I also can make my text box the way I want it to be and decide that I don't want to do this business over again every time I make a new text box. So I just want to duplicate it. Also, the same thing might be down here, right? And I don't want to do it over again. And I want the type to be really the same. If I'm dragging and dropping it, the type isn't going to be exactly the same. Okay, so I don't want the student to drag these words around. I want them to be locked in position. I don't want them to be movable. They're not doing phrase match here. They're doing picture match. So I want this to be locked. I also wanted to mention that in here with the style, we also have the ability to change how our words are justified within the text box, right? We can have it centered or left justified or right justified. Okay, now let's get some images over here for our bank. All right, so in order to get some of the pictures for the picture match activity, I'm coming here to the picture icon. My choices are to take a photo, to take a video, or to upload a photo. I want to take a photo from the desktop of this hard drive and put it in this activity. So I'm going to go to upload. And let's go with the airplane. I can either drag and drop this out, or I can tell it to open to get rid of the box that closed. I can change this image size, the same as with the text and the line size, right? By dragging and dropping it out. I can rotate it. And I want this image. I also could all right, it doesn't do what I was thinking. I want to change the size of this image so that it easily can fit in the space between the words, right? Without chopping into that space and into the lines down here. While I'm saving this image, I need to have it fairly closely cropped to the borders of this image. If I have a lot of white space going around on the edges, this is going to make it so that it is crossing over into the words and crossing the boundaries of the grid where we want the student to put it. So I want to make sure that when I'm saving my image that it's closely cropped to the borders of the image, to the boundaries of the image, right? And I want to have this picture sized so that it's easy for the student to get it within this pretty tight space right here, right? So I found my image and I'm going to put it over here into the bank. Okay. In this activity, airplane needs to be in this box, but airplane also needs to be in this box. And so in my bank over here, I'm going to have a stack, right? I'm going to create a stack just like we had with the cards in the classroom, okay? But I can actually duplicate this image and use this same airplane image to create a stack, right? And so the student drags it over here, and then they have another one to drag down here, okay? I could make a yellow airplane and an airplane or something like that, but I don't need that for this. They can use the same word. I also want to point out that there are layers here, right? This airplane is fitting over the top of that other airplane in the stack. All right, if you're familiar with using any image editors, you may be familiar with layering. So this, all the items in this whole entire thing are in layers depending on when they were added right now, unless I tell it that I want it to be in a different layer. So the first item I added was this line, and then I added this line, and then I added text boxes, and then I added 2 images, right? And so the layers that they are this at the bottom, and then this, right? And so this, whoa, this is going to appear over the top of this image that I added first, and then I added this image next, okay? Maybe I don't want it to do that, all right? Maybe I want the other one to be first, and so I can change the order. Okay, so now this one is going behind. And this is a good thing to know and be aware of, because sometimes our instructions in the picture match are to put something behind something, put something under something, on top of something, inside something. And so we can kind of create that feel by being selective about how the order, how the layer is ordered, right? What we want to be aware of is how that is going to interact with our grid and our text boxes, right? Right now, this image is going behind the grid. It's behind the words, right? If I were to change that and bring it to the top of this stack, right? If you have a deck of cards, this airplane's now on the top of the deck, right? And so it is going to superimpose over the top of our words and over the top of our grid, right? Where here, it isn't going to interfere with the reading of the words or where it is with the grid. Now I want to add another image. We need a horse. Okay, so I'm coming back to the picture icon. I'm telling it that I want to upload another image. And I've come in here to my folder that has the images that I want to choose from. And I want to choose a horse. All right, so I'm going to drag my horse down, or I could just select open. I need to get rid of the box. And now I have a giant horse. All right, so I need to reposition this photo so that it can fit here, right? It's not fitting. Got to make it fit. I probably do want the layer to go to the back so that he fits nicely without interrupting with how we view that. I'm going to drag my horse over here. I need a horse here, I need a horse here, and I need a horse here. So I'm going to duplicate this horse and line up my stack, and I'm going to duplicate the horse again and line up my stack. And now I have so that then when the student comes to this work, they're able to read the words horse and drag the horse, and they're able to read airplane and drag the airplane, and then horse and drag the horse, and then horse and drag the horse again, and then airplane and drag the airplane again, and their images are done, right? We didn't do these, but their images are done and they've had enough. So I'm paying attention to, do I have the right images for each of these boxes, right? And if it needs to be a yellow horse, then I'm going to need to make sure that I have the appropriate selection of images down here. So I'm paying pretty close attention to making sure that what choices of images that I'm giving them are that it's purposeful, right? And so if one of the boxes says horse and one of the boxes says yellow horse, I don't just want to give them a yellow horse, probably I want to give them another horse and a yellow horse, so that when they get to that descriptive adjective, right, in that yellow horse, they are needing to choose which one fits that picture, right? Okay, also, I do not want to lock this. I want this to be staying unlocked because they need to be able to move this around. I do want them to move this. So I need to remember not to have that be unlocked, to be locked. Okay, and so I think we didn't talk about the toolbar up here. So we have the delete toolbar, which would delete your work if you're the teacher creating the work and you're making something. I think it deletes your entry if you're a student adding a response, right? So we have a zoom button, right? That can make us, you know, have a look in closer. We can get rid of our toolbars, which gives us sort of a cleaner view. It does give us a little bit more working space as long as we are doing what we want to do, right? If you are selecting here and you're making some scribbles and you're in here, you don't have the ability to get out of that until you change this, right? Okay, and then we have the undo and the redo features, right? And undo up here, okay? And our students may or may not be familiar with those features. I know that some of our kids are. The ones who are using tablet time a lot already know this, but some of our kiddos don't. And to have a mistake like not using the right tool here could be really frustrating. So we can change the color of our tools, right? And also we can use the erase tool like this for getting rid of them as well, or the undo tool. I've many times discovered that I'm not using the move tool. I'm using this, and I come in here to try to move, and I've made dots around on my thing, right? And so I can quickly come and clean that up with the undo button. And then when we are all finished with creating, let's get out of here. All right, we are all finished with creating our masterpiece. We click our check button because we are done. And so we created the new activity, right? And check that our directions are how we want them to be, and we can save. And then we come in here and we can assign the activity to whatever students we want. We can schedule it for appearing later, the same results we've been using, and we can come in here and add this to a collection, which means that it is ready. It's all collected in how you're viewing it in your library, pretty much. And this is where we can edit the activity, and we can go in and make changes to this thing that we have just made. The share link is how I'm getting that link that we have a teacher link, and we have the I'm not seeing it right now, but if we had this in the other view and it was done and we're assigning it, we could get the student link. So if you are trying to send it to students in an email or whatever, make sure that you're not copying the teacher link, okay? So we can make a copy and edit activity, and we can call this one Picture Match Demo 2. We can come down here to our template, and we can make changes on this, right? I have to go to unlock to make changes, and I can unlock this, and I can change what we've got going on here, right? Unlock. Okay, and I can change what we have going on, and then remember to lock it again when we did this. And I can change the images right now, right? Okay, and so for this new activity, we want different images. And then I go through the process again of manipulating these images so that they work with this space. And so I'm changing my phrases and I'm changing my images. And I think that's about all I've got here. So hopefully this helps you guys with, or anybody who wants to do this, with creating a similar kind of activity to the Edmark Picture Match that I made in SeeSaw.